Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Mike. I'm a senior recruiting analyst here at Sports Recruits, and tonight we'll be discussing a really important topic in the recruiting process, which is preparing for interviews with college coaches. Some of you may be in a position now that we're after September 1st, where this is something that is, really top of mind for you. You may have college coaches reaching out, requesting to get on the phone, get on a Zoom meeting, having you come visit their school. So we wanted to make sure that we gave you guys some additional insight on this topic because we want to make sure you are as prepared as possible for those types of conversations. Like I said, my name is Mike. My role here at Sports Recruits is working with student athletes who are specifically looking to get additional support in the recruiting process. So that could be help with communicating with college coaches, assisting people with the videos that they're putting together. But one of the most important things that I do is actually doing interview prep meetings with the families that I'm working with directly, whether that be, giving them an idea of the types of questions to expect, the types of things that you should be asking on your end. And that's what we're going to really be getting into tonight a bit more. For those who do have questions as we are going through tonight's presentation, keep in mind that we do have some time saved at the end for a Q&A, but you can also utilize the chat box and the Q&A box if there is anything that you would like to get addressed. And I'll do my best to get to as many of those questions as possible before we wrap up on tonight's presentation. In terms of the agenda prior to the Q&A, we're first going to talk about the importance of interviews and ultimately the keys to have a successful interview more than anything else. We're going to talk about the questions to prepare for from a college coach and also what to ask a college coach when it is your time to get some additional info about that particular program. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And first we'll talk about, why interviews are important for college coaches. And, more than anything, this is going to be a chance to make a lasting impression with that coach or the entire coaching staff, depending on how many people are going to be present for it. If a coach is requesting to speak with you on the phone or speak with you for a video meeting, that means you've done something to pique their interest in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they've seen you compete live in person at a recruiting event, like a showcase or a prospect camp. Maybe they've watched your video and they think that you'd be a really good fit for what they're trying to achieve in terms of what their team goals are. But that's just a piece of it, right? Making sure that you are going to be someone that is going to, be a good personality, someone who is going to have a personality that is going to jive well with the other players in the team. Are you someone that is going to be able to handle the coaching style that particular program might have? So this is just a chance to get to know you better as a human more than anything else. Also, I think one piece that also gets lost a lot of the time as well is this is also a chance for you to evaluate the coach and their program. As much as you're getting recruited during these conversations, you are also recruiting these different programs that are showing interest in you. That's why it's super important that you are going to take some time to actually prepare and get some questions on your end that you would like to get answered as well, because there's going to be certain things that are really going to play a big role in making a school, make sense for you. Do they have the major that you're interested in? Is it in the right location? Is there going to be a potential opportunity to get some playing time? Maybe not the first year, but shortly after that. Are you going to have an opportunity to, compete for a spot? What's the academic support like? And that's something that we'll get more into in terms of the types of questions that you can answer in a little bit. But this should not be a situation when you're on these calls where a coach is talking the entire time. You're saying yes, no, and just answering their questions. You want it to come off as, you want it to be a full conversation. You want to be able to hop in and also add on to it whenever you have a chance to do so as well. The other piece that comes up a lot, and this happens with a lot of the families that I meet with, is sometimes you'll hear from a coaching staff that maybe the school isn't necessarily an ideal fit for you for whatever reason. Maybe it's not at the right division or conference that you're interested in. Maybe it's not in a area that you were, planning on trying to attend school for. But the advice that we always give is if a coach is showing interest in speaking with you, more often than not, you should take the meeting just to see how the conversation would go. At the very least, it's going to be practice and it's going to make you more comfortable. So when that school that you are very interested in does reach out, it's not going to be the first time that you're in that environment. We understand that sometimes this is something that could be pretty nerve-wracking for a lot of people. So the more that you do it, the more comfortable you will be. Also, there have been plenty of student athletes that I've worked with who have had an opportunity to meet with the coaching staff that they just didn't feel like that school was the best place for them. But then after getting off that meeting, they decided, you know what, this is a place that I would potentially consider. And this is a place that I would like to learn a little bit more about now that I know the coach does, they have built a great program and they do have a lot of the same values that I have. And they are going to be able to give me a lot of what I want to get out of that college experience. So just one thing to keep in mind, if a coach is showing interest in speaking with you, unless you're in a position where you've already committed or you're 100% certain that it's not the right fit for you, maybe they don't have the exact major you're interested in studying, for one example as to why that might be the case. more often than not, you should be taking any of these meetings that are getting offered to you, especially if you're earlier on the process, like, the current 2026 recruiting class right now. Also, on top of that, it also is going to give that coach a chance to see your level of preparation and how serious you are about their program. That's why it's very important that you do take some time to do some research on the school ahead of it, because ultimately they're trying to get a sense of how seriously you're taking that conversation, right? We want to give you guys a chance that, this is something that you are kind of going out of your way to get a better sense of, what has been their historic records historically? Are they someone that has been competing? Are they turning over and they have a lot of people who are graduating? So you're going to be a part of this new recruiting class that's going to really instill these new core values that the team is trying to instill. And lastly, it's also going to give you a chance to verify what their next steps are as a program and also what their timeline is looking like. The timeline of colleges has been something that's really been a hot topic lately, especially for a lot of the student athletes and the families that I'm working with, where it seems like coaches are much more comfortable taking their time in this process than previous years before. When you're getting on these meetings, it's going to be really clear for you to have a better understanding of what they need from you specifically. Do they need you to continue sending footage? Do they want to see you play in person again? Do they want you to come for a visit at some point down the road? Getting on these meetings is going to be the best way for you to make sure that you're maximizing everything you need to do on your end to continue having progress with that coaching staff more than anything else. So we'll talk about how you are able to identify those next steps as we get into some of the questions that you can ask before these meetings conclude also. So the keys to a successful interview, and we're going to talk about in-person versus a Zoom meeting like this, where you're going to have a chance to go back and forth. A lot of things are going to be similar, but we also want to make sure and kind of talk about some of the things that might be a bit different as well. So if you are in a spot where you were invited for an official visit or an unofficial visit, and you're in a position where you're meeting with the coach in his office, so you're taking a tour, you're sitting down for lunch, whatever the setup is, there's going to be a few things that you're going to want to keep in mind. First and foremost, being professional, dressing well. That's something that comes up a lot. Generally, I think the best rule of thumb to go by is business casual is kind of the best way to go about it. For the male student athletes, you don't necessarily have to go for full suit, but maybe a collared shirt, slacks, khakis, something along those lines is usually good. Some programs will even give you a heads up on what to wear specifically. Maybe if you're going to be going to practice, they could probably have you in just like shorts and a t-shirt. Maybe they even are able to provide you with some merchandise as well. But more often than not, if you're not sure, play it safe and try and have more of that business casual type of outlook. At the same time, if your parents are with you during these in-person meetings, make sure you are at the forefront of the conversation and you're not looking over for your parents to answer the questions that are being asked directly to you. We understand, parents, you're excited to be there. You want to make sure that your son or daughter is also going to be having a great interview as well. But if coaches are seeing that that the student athlete is not willing to speak up for themselves and they're referring to you all the time, that is something that not necessarily a red flag, but it is something that could cause for some concerns for that coaching staff. So it's great that you're there to support. You will have your opportunity to ask your questions and get anything clarified that you're looking to during these meetings. But when something is specifically addressed to the student athlete, make sure you give that student athlete the opportunity to handle it directly. At the same time, too, you want to make sure that you be yourself, that you're not trying to over impress the coaching staff by any means. If you're a version of yourself that you're not very comfortable during this meeting, then you're going to be in a position where you might not continue to be comfortable if you do end up going to that school. So as much as you want to be professional, as much as you want to make sure that you're being respectful the entire time that you're there, you also want to make sure that you're able to just be yourself at the same time too. If you're in a position where you feel like you can't be yourself, chances are that might not be the school that is going to be the right place for you to attend. So just as much as it is about being the right fit for the team, based on your athletic ability and what your strengths are on the field or, on the court or whatever sport it is that you play, it's also to make sure that, is my personality going to fit well with how these coaches operate or how these other players are going to be at the same time too. So being yourself is extremely important at the same time. You also want to make sure that when you are having these in-person conversations, making sure that you have your preparation sorted out. We talked about that before. Maybe there's certain paperwork that you might want to have, addressing coaches directly, being interactive, having direct eye contact. making sure that it really is a full-fledged conversation. It's not just you taking in the info and just saying yes, no, and just answering questions. You want to be as engaged as possible. Eye contact is a great way to show that you are actively listening. This is the same case for whether it's a job interview, and that's essentially what these meetings are in a sense, right? It isn't for a job, but it also is a chance for you to just prove more than anything else that you are going to be an ideal person for that team to bring in at some point down the road. And this is a big one. Establishing next steps. Where do we go from here? What is your timeline? What do you need from me to assist in your evaluation of me as a student athlete? These are all going to be crucial pieces of having these types of interviews with college coaches. If you leave a meeting and you don't know what that coach needs from you, chances are you're not going to know what that next step is, right? So asking during the meeting and also following up after as well, reaching out via email, via text, whatever that type of communication was leading up to the visit that you had. Hey, coach, just want to reach out and say thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you and the staff. Really enjoyed seeing the campus and the facilities. Once again, if there's anything else you need on my end, I'd love to hear, feel free to contact me at any time. If there's anything else that you need, or if there's anything that you can provide me for to get a better sense of what your timeline is for the class of 2026, I'd love to hear about that. More often than not, that's something that you can discuss while you're in person, but following up after and at the very least thanking them for their time and clarifying what those next steps are, that is really what you're looking to do. And that's the number one priority you should have when you are having these conversations. The video call, still a little bit different, but there's still a lot of the same goals and same things that you should be focused on. You still want to make sure you dress well. You still want to have a list of prepared questions that you're going to ask. And you still want to be the main person in the conversation. If your parents are involved in the call, you should be the one sitting in the middle, and the parents could be on the sides. If you're constantly looking over off screen, if there's a lot going on in the background and you seem distracted, that's something that could rub coaching staffs the wrong way. So make sure that you are finding a quiet place in your house or wherever you are to make sure that you have your full undivided attention to that coaching staff. Make sure you have your questions, especially if you're on a video call, maybe you can have it written down. You can have it pulled up on your screen. You can have that paperwork like transcripts. Maybe they wanted to ask you about SAT or ACTs, maybe your schedule for this year, because they want to get a better sense of if you're taking AP or college level courses. Really do your best to have a lot of that academic information sorted out. Maybe even your upcoming event schedule. That's something that sometimes coaches will ask about because they might want to have an opportunity and ask about, hey, when's the next time we could see you compete in person? So anything like that is always great to have in front of you, because if you have to stop and pull out your phone or pull up an email that you can't find, the conversation is just going to end up at a standstill, and it's just not going to flow the way that it should. So having all of that preloaded and ready to go is just going to make everything go a lot more seamless. Eye contact still holds up. Like I was just saying, if you're looking over and someone's trying to talk to you off screen, that's showcasing to the coaches sometimes that maybe you don't have your fully undivided attention, meaning you're not taking this seriously the way that you should. And the same rule applies, even if it is a video call, following up, thanking the coach for their time, talking about next steps. Maybe that is getting onto the campus at that point. Maybe it is, having a chance to see them at a showcase so you can reach out and introduce yourself in person for the first time. So again, you can see a lot of similarities when it's in person versus video call, but really the biggest thing more than anything else is just making sure that you're showing that you're respecting the process and that you do the preparation ahead of time, because that's really what's going to make sure that you go ahead and, really make the most out of it and that you really do impress the coaching staff more than anything else. All right, next up, we'll talk about the questions to prepare for from a college coach. And this is something that's tough because obviously every coach has a different perspective and the types of things that they want to learn. But based on our feedback we get from our student athletes and having conversations with coaches, these are some of the more popular questions that typically come up. Asking about why you have direct interest in that school, what you have to contribute to that program. And a big one that I focus on with a lot of the athletes that I work with is talking about your strengths and weaknesses as a student athlete. Usually people are pretty confident in talking about what their strengths are as a player. But weaknesses is sometimes where they get tripped up. I think the biggest thing when you are talking about a weakness that you have on the field is you want to identify something that you're doing to actively make sure that that is no longer a weakness in your game. If you're a lacrosse player, for example, coach, I feel really good about my agility and getting to where I need to be. I think I have great instincts. One thing that I think I'm lacking on a bit now is just like, my stick handling and really trying to finish with my left hand. But I've been taking extra time after practice to really focus on that because I want to make sure I'm as complete as player as possible by the time I become a collegiate athlete. Those are the types of things that you want to do, because if you've identified a weakness, you should be actively trying to improve on that particular skill. So make sure that you're going out of your way to identify what is it that you're doing. If you know that this is a place that you can improve, what are you doing to try and achieve that goal? And outside of that, we talked about the academic piece. We talked about, making sure that you are able to showcase that you are able to have that workload. Leadership quality is something that comes up pretty often during these conversations. So if you are someone who's been named captain, or if you have any leadership roles of clubs or organizations, if you have a part-time job, these are all things that could end up playing a big factor, and just coaches getting a better sense of you as a person rather than just of what they've seen on the field from you up to this point. And as we talked about before, having all that information preloaded, like your schedule, like what you have coming up, your academic background, is really, really important also. So again, feel free to take a look or screenshot this. We're also going to send a recording of this webinar, at some point tomorrow. So if you don't have a chance to screenshot it right now, no worries. We're going to send you a YouTube link to this recording within 24 hours of this meeting tonight. So just be on the lookout for that as well. And then next up, we'll talk about the questions that you can ask, because once again, this is your opportunity to also go directly reach out to these coaches and get a better sense of if this is the right culture and the right place for you. So one of the things that you want to steer clear from when you are asking coaches questions during meetings like this is, don't ask questions that you can easily find the answer yourself. In my opinion, one of the worst questions you can ask is, well, coach, what was your record last season? That is something that you can easily go online and find that info for yourself. You can showcase to that school that you have done research. And if, let's say, they had a successful season, you can say, coach, what would you say are some of the main reasons that you guys had, you guys were able to make such a deep run in the playoffs? Would you say it was based on, the leadership qualities that you had with your upperclassmen? Did you have people that ended up, having bigger years and improved more than you expected? What went into that being such a great season? The other piece that you can get into is asking questions that you would need to be a part of that program to know the answers for. What is it like in season versus out of season in terms of our commitments to the team? What is the mood and atmosphere like on game day or when we are playing a specific rival? What type of academic support is available to us? Is there anything required in terms of going to study halls, or is there a certain GPA I need to maintain when I'm on this team? So those, again, something that you would need to specifically be a part of that team to get involved in, practice schedules, something along those lines. Trying to find out of the overall relationship is with the professors on campus, asking, hey, what's your favorite and the most challenging aspect of being at this particular school and having this role as a head coach of this program? And again, the biggest one, if you only ask one question, that one question would be, hey, so what are the next steps after today? Really appreciated your time here. Really enjoyed this experience. But what else do you need from me that's going to assist in your evaluation overall on me as a student athlete? And also, especially if you are a little bit later on in the process, maybe you're a 2025, feel comfortable asking about that timeline. Look, coach, hopefully I'm in a position where I want to potentially try and make a decision on where I'm going to go to school sooner rather than later. Is that a timeline that you're comfortable with? Do you have an idea of when you would like to finalize this recruiting class? That's not something I would recommend asking on the first conversation all of the time. I think you can feel out when the right time is to ask questions like that. But these are the types of things that I think are really good to lean into, because you might not know some of the things that you really want to know about the school. So again, feel free to utilize this as a way just to kind of have a starting point, or at the very least, something in your back pocket you can lean on whenever you do have those conversations with college coaches. So that's everything I wanted to go through here tonight, everyone. Hopefully that was some valuable information in terms of getting a better understanding of the types of questions you can expect, the types of questions that you should prepare on your end, what you should have available, and how you can do some preparation for these meetings prior to them starting. So now what we'll do is we'll take some time to look at some of the questions that may have been written into the chat and the Q&A box here. And again, for anyone who didn't hear that before, feel free to start writing those in at the same time as well. So let's see, we have a few minutes to go through some of these questions, and we'll see what has come in so far. Let's see. All right. So first one that popped up here is this meeting recorded, and can we access the recording? If you didn't hear it before, we will make this recording available to everyone after the fact. So we'll send you an email at some point tomorrow, giving you a heads up that the recording is available on our YouTube channel. Even if you didn't watch this live, you'll still receive access to the recording. So if you know anyone who couldn't make it live, just give them the heads up that that is also the case. Let's see what else we have here in terms of questions. So someone just wrote in, can the class of 2025 still build relationships with coaches right now? The biggest thing that I would say for that is making sure that if you are reaching out to a coaching staff for the first time as a 2025, including in that email or including in that text, hey, just want to confirm if you still are actively recruiting this position for the 2025 class. That's a good way to at least find out if that school is even a viable option. If they say yes, absolutely. There still is a chance to build that relationship. If they respond and they say, hey, you know what, at this time, we're really not in a position where we're going to be bringing on additional players for your position. We wish you the best of luck moving forward. Then at least what you've done at that point is you've freed yourself up to focus on some other opportunities at that point. So again, tough situation, but at the very least, the only way you should give up on a school is when a school explicitly tells you that they're no longer actively recruiting the type of player that you are. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, looks like they're starting to come in here as well. Let's see what we have. It looks like someone reached out about being an international student. So is there any specific questions you would want to ask? If you're from Canada, if you're from somewhere else in the country, making sure that you ask the coaches those questions as well. Is there anything specifically that you need to do on the application? Is there anyone within the Office of Admissions that we'd be able to get in touch with that can assist us through the application process? Would I need to take the SAT or the ACT? These are things that come up pretty consistently with some of the international athletes I've worked with in the past. So you would 100% want to make sure you have all of your bases covered especially if you are in a situation where you might be filling out a college application sometime soon, because usually that's a bit of a different process for international students compared to someone who does live in the US. So fantastic question there. All right, looks like people are still continuing to write in here. Let's see. Should you ask a coach how many they are still recruiting for your 2026 class or position? I don't know if you necessarily have to ask how many directly. I think it's more just asking what is your timeline and, are you still actively searching for that particular position? If it's later on in the process, I think it's okay to ask that. It's like, how many more people do you have before you wrap up your 2025 class? But as a 2026, more often than not, even if they started getting, people have started receiving offers, chances are it's still at the beginning stages. So they might not even have a direct answer because of things like the transfer portal and what student athletes might be leaving early and who's graduating and everything that comes with that. So I wouldn't necessarily ask that question directly all the time, but I think there is a way to still kind of get a better understanding of it without directly addressing that, if that makes sense. Let's see. Someone just reached out and asked, what is the best way to introduce yourself to a coach via email? What information should be included in the email? You guys can actually check out our Sports Recruits Resource Center. We actually have some built out templates that you'll be able to take advantage of. I'll actually put that in the Zoom chat box here for you guys as well, and you'll be able to kind of see some of the things that we think are the most important to include. So for anyone who is actively watching this now, if you head into the Q&A chat box, you'll be able to see that I just included a link to our resource center. For anyone who is watching a recording of this, just go to sportsrecruits.com/resources, and you'll be able to find our contacting college coaches section, and you'll find some different templates, particularly for introducing yourself for the first time there. So great question for sure. All right. Okay. Looks like we have time for a couple of more here. Let's see. Someone asked, what are the major recruiting dates for a 2026 grad year? Depending on your sport, those dates have both passed already. That can either be June 15th, for all Division II sports and a majority of Division I sports. September 1st was the date for softball, men's lacrosse, and women's lacrosse in terms of communication really opening up for the class of 2026. And that's all at the Division I level for the record too. So if you're a 2026 student athlete, there's really no more rules or regulations you have to worry about in terms of how coaches are limited in responding to you. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. So someone is reaching out. They're a 2024 athlete, but they're taking time in prep school to do, I guess, some sort of gap year or post-grad year. Is there still a chance to be recruited as that type of athlete? Absolutely, because even though you technically are a 2024, you still are a 2025 technically, since that is when you would be starting your college career. And again, kind of the same advice, reaching out to these schools and asking, very upfront, hey, look, if you're not recruiting this position for the 2025 class right now, no hard feelings. I get it. Just kind of keep it moving at that point. But the only way you can really know for sure if a school is still looking to bring on talent for that grad year is if you go and reach out to them and directly and ask. So Look, there's might be some schools that have finalized. That's okay. Don't take it personally. Don't panic. There are going to be programs out there that are still looking to bring on student athletes. And even if they don't have availability right now, something might change 2 months from now or 3 months from now, and they might end up reaching back out to you at the same time as well. So for any school that you have distinct interest in, the worst thing that they can say is no. So you might as well reach out and ask. Do not take it personal if you don't get the answer you're looking for right away, or if you don't get a response right away. Okay. All right, so someone is reaching out and they asked, when is the earliest I can commit to a college? And do you know how much a scholarship is worth before you sign with the school? Earliest, I would say, depending on your sport, usually it's going to happen after that June 15th or September 1st date if it's a Division I school. At Division II, June 15th is going to be the same deal. And for the record, that would be for the class of 2026. So going into your junior year. Division III, I would say, you would be able to commit technically earlier than that, but more often than not, it is going to happen that summer going into senior years when I see a lot of Division III athletes commit. In terms of scholarships, usually how that works is they'll be able to provide you with something called a likely letter prior to that. So if you are receiving some sort of academic-based scholarships, they'll be able to look at your academics prior to providing you with some sort of scholarship package. If you are in a position where you're receiving an athletic-based scholarship, more often than not, before you say yes to an offer, they'd be able to give you a general range of what type of aid you'd be able to receive. So yeah, if a school is providing you with an offer and there's nothing financial that has been part of that conversation, you are completely within your right to ask about that for sure. I would not suggest, for the record, asking about scholarships the first time that you are communicating with the school, especially if you are doing an interview for the first time. That part of the conversation is going to come up naturally down the road. So don't feel like you have to necessarily bring that up all the time. But if you are starting to talk about like, hey, we want to sign you, this is where we're at, absolutely. That would be the appropriate time to start talking about the financial piece, whether that's talking to the coach directly, or maybe they get you in touch with someone within admissions who can talk about the academic component of that as well. Someone in the class of 2027 is asking when they should start actively sending emails to coaches. Sooner the better as a 2027. Again, D1 and D2 schools are limited in how they can respond, but at the very least, you're putting yourself in a spot where you can get on the radar of these programs. You're in a position where you can start learning about prospect camps or showcases that they're hosting. You can go on the school website and potentially find the recruiting questionnaire. You can send updates on your video, and coaches are able to look at that information freely. Especially if you have a Pro Sports Recruits account, we make it really easy to contact college coaches if you guys have access to that. So as a 2027, if you feel like you have a really good built out profile and you have video for coaches to look at, you should feel comfortable in starting that communication at some point in the near future. Okay. All right. Looks like we have time for one more here, guys. I'm seeing some repeats of some questions that we already discussed, so I'm just going to try and get one more. Okay. All right. Last one here. Sorry, guys. It just a bunch just came in all at once. I'm just going to try and find one that we haven't answered just yet. Okay. Looks like we have one more question here. So again, another person who is actually going through, it sounds like the postgraduate process. So they're taking some sort of postgrad year, maybe a prep school, something along those lines. Is it a benefit to tell that to college coaches? 100% yes. If you're in a position where you've already made that decision, you want to let that school know, hey, coach, I've been getting evaluated as a 2025, but I made the decision to go to insert school here next season. Just wanted to let you know that that's going to be the case. If you still are actively looking to bring people on for the 2026 class, I'd love to stay in contact with you throughout this process. So absolutely, that's something you'd want to get on their radar, especially if you already have made that decision, because it's going to change how that coach might look at you. And especially if you're taking a year, an additional year, they may not have made as much progress with the 2026 class up to that point. So 100% make sure that you go out of your way to do that for sure. All right, everyone. I think that is all the time that we have here tonight. Thank you all so much for all the questions that came in. It's really helpful to get a better sense of, the types of things that you guys are looking to get more information on. We do these webinars three times a month, if not more sometimes. So if there's anything else that you ever want us to discuss, just reach out to help@sportsrecruits.com. And we're always looking to take on extra ideas as well. And once again, you guys will all receive a recording of this at some point tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, once again, thanks everyone. Really appreciate your time. Hope you all enjoyed this and learned some new info about how to prepare for interviews with coaches. Best of luck to all of you moving forward who do have those interviews scheduled. And yeah, thanks so much for your time, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thanks again.